by a van and killed. The preacher said he had flown through the air and been struck in the right shoulder by the panel piece that extends between two windows in a van. This had killed him instantly and broken his neck, and he said he had seen his body flying forward through the air and his spirit going upward. This was apparently confirmed in the hospital, where it was shown that the man had suffered massive trauma to the right shoulder and broken his neck. The other death the preacher said he had witnessed was that of a gentleman who was a known drunk around town. This man often would stagger home from the town's only bar at 2 to 3 a.m. One morning in the dead of winter, he was found frozen to death in his small shack cabin. Winter in the north is harsh. The preacher said he had a vision of the exact moment in which the guy had stumbled and fallen while trying to put kerosene into the large heater that was sitting 0.5 meters away from the wall, and the guy had drunkenly lurched and fallen behind it, never lighting the heater, which would have saved him from freezing. So again, very oddly specific, but apparently the man was found in the exact same position as the preacher had described. I couldn't verify this, but I would probably ask another local before I believed him on this one. Third thing, this is what he had said while delivering the service, but I asked him about it again, was that he had a heart attack a year or so before and had been dead for 5 or 6 minutes, but that while he was gone, he experienced a different reality, and that it was so different from this reality as to be completely indescribable. Like nothing about heaven that I had ever thought or heard or imagined of, as an exact quote as my memory of a few days ago permits. Keep in mind this is from a small town preacher man who had been raised in that old-time religion, streets of gold, etc. He even said there was no streets at all, forget golden streets, just a lot of lines and shapes that made no sense, but that were beautiful beyond compare and gave him overwhelming peace. This is what he said at the funeral. Here is why I thought this was pretty neat, because this is basically apostasy as far as this guy is concerned, and he is telling it like it is to a bunch of small town folks. It blew my fucking mind. And the way he described his minutes out of his body sounded exactly like a DMT trip, to be quite honest. This is also the part I thought was least likely to be a LARP out of the whole thing. He also said he could see himself returning to his body and could see his spirit body and physical body separately for some time. Now, my thoughts were overall that he was telling the truth. It is possible that it may have all been a LARP, things he said to bolster his legend around town or increase his own air of mysticism. I do tend to think skeptically as regards human motivations, as a person's desire to feel special and powerful can take many forms, and the only thing I am surprised at by now is that I ever expect anyone to be any different. But I did not get a feeling that he was lying, a sense I have developed to a decent degree, so he is either an accomplished liar, which is easy enough in practice, or was telling the truth, or the truth as he interpreted it.
I'll be posting a few myths from my country, Brazil, here. The first is the myth of Guarana. It all happened when an Indian couple who had no children asked the god Tupa to make their desire to be parents possible. The request was granted, and the couple had a handsome and healthy boy who was esteemed throughout the tribe. Envious of his qualities, Jurupari, the god of darkness, decided to kill the little Indian. One day, while the boy was harvesting fruit in the forest, Jurupari became a snake. Tupa sent deafening thunder warning his parents of the danger that the boy was in, but there was no time until the snake killed the boy with its poison. Thus Tupa ordered the child's eyes to be planted so that a plant would be born from them. The fruit of this plant should be given to people to eat in order to give them energy. Guarana was born in the place where the eyes were planted, a fruit that has the appearance of eyes. The Curupira demon, Curupira, known as the forest demon, whistles and uses false signals. It gathers many stories that involve inexplicable mysteries, for example, the disappearance of hunters as well as forgetting the paths. They say that with their feet turned back, Curupira deceives and confuses people who damage their habitat, for example, hunters, loggers, woodcutters, etc. The first written report of said demon was made by Spanish Jesuit priest José de Anchieta, wrote about the character in the 16, calling him a demon that affects the Indians. For the Indians and the Bandeirantes, Curupira was considered a dangerous, demonic, malicious, much-feared creature. This is because this character was associated with many cases of violence, sexual abuse, child abduction and psychological horror. Able to bewitch children, Curupira kidnapped them and only after 7 years were they returned to their parents. For this reason, he became known as the evil spirit willing to haunt the nights of the Indians and the Bandeirantes. Corpo Seco. Corpo Seco is a cursed being, an undead that is condemned to roam the earth terrorizing people. He is a corpse that has been returned by the earth which does not accept him because of the evils he has done in life. The evils of the deceased who turns into dry bodies are so great that neither God nor the devil wanted to receive his soul. As the soul of the deceased was not accepted in heaven and hell and the earth refused to devour the body, the dead man returns to the plane of the living and, in the condition of neither living nor dead, will terrify the living beings who pass by him. As it is not alive, it is unable to feed either. Therefore, Corpo Seco, literally, has a dry body, with only bones and skin. Corpo Seco, too, has enormous nails, as they never stop growing. Numsi Pati. In the streets of Teresina, capital of Piauí, there's a legend of a woman that is seen seated in a bench, holding an unlit cigarette. After midnight, that is always under the light of a lamp, she sits there waiting a man to take her for a simple prostitute and offer her to light the cigarette. A kind of keyword to propose a program. When the woman accepted, the guy would bend down to light it only to realize that woman was slowly getting up and its legs bent in ways it should not be possible, and made her impossibly tall. She then would lit her own cigarette in the fires of the street lamp, while muttering the phrase, Numsi Pati, you shouldn't have done it. Cabeça de Cuia, bullhead. A poor fisherman named Crispim was frustrated that he couldn't get any fish after a whole day of trying. When he comes back to his home, his mother, an old witch who had abandoned his witchcraft after being converted to Christianity, is also frustrated since she didn't have anything to cook for them to eat. She then makes a water soup, basically boiled water with salt and pepper, and served it in a bowl to her son, Crispim, saying the content of the soup. Frustrated and hungry, in a burst of anger, takes the bowl his mother served the soup, and kills his own mother with it. The mother, succumbing to her old ways just before dying, curse his own son, so that his head would be deformed to resemble the instrument of the killing and that his soul should be forever as empty as the bowl she served him. He now is cursed to fish the Parnaíba River forever, without ever catching any fish. Cabeça de Cuia, bullhead, can't. Desperate with the guilt, Bullhead ran away while his head was being shaped in a painful manner. He eventually tried to drown himself, but the curse made him unable to drown. But if leaves the river, he feels a maddening thirst that can't be quenched with water. The only way to his curse to be lifted is if he eats the heart of 07 virgins called Maria. which a cruel prank because no virgins ever bathed in the river waters, and Maria's name that is protected by God, it's his mother after all. He then vents his frustration in drowning people who wander too close to him, and rapes the corpses. Brazilian here. My grandpa hunted a caboclo d'água. It's basically a Brazilian xenomorph-looking water entity. You can find news about people going out in expeditions to kill it. Also many people where I used live as a child reported werewolf attacks. The headless mule is a ghost from Brazilian folklore. It is the ghost of a woman who was struck by God for an unspecified crime, often said to be having sex with a priest. God cursed her so that every Thursday night she would turn into a headless mule that spews forth flames from its neck stump. It is still known as a regular mule would, although it is also known to cry like an adult woman. The curse can be halted by making her bleed with a needle or tying her to a cross, although this is only temporary. If her bridle, which is somehow attached to her non-existent head, is removed, she will be freed from the curse for the entire duration of the remover's life. There are apparently some versions of the myth where she marries you if you free her. Weird. To avoid being spotted by her while she's in her horse form, you should lie down and cover anything that could shine like teeth or nails. She has poor vision, and she'll likely miss you. Brazilian here. Screw this guy, he ain't got a clue of what he's saying. Curupira, magical creature that protects the forests of Brazil and likes to troll lost hunters. It's a benevolent spirit, at least until you piss him off. Stone Castle of Piauí, a naturally formed rock structure, about the size of a 4-story building, that is very much like a real castle. It has halls, pillars and even stairs. It was said that centuries ago, when Piauí was just a colony of Portugal, a prince that ran away from Napoleon came to Brazil with all of his riches and had ordered the building of a huge castle, being bored in the colony. He eventually started to indulge himself in orgies that were increasingly more disturbing, to the point where he ordered sacrifices from local town SL folks. He would send an envoy to local towns and invite poor people to a feast, and they would fall for the trap after the feast. The prince ordered the killing of the guests and drank their blood. A priest noticed the killings and asked God for a miracle. God sent an angel, disguised a poor man, that accepted the invitation of the prince. After the feast, when the prince's guard were preparing their swords, the angel revealed himself and punished the prince and his servants by transforming them into rock until the second coming of Christ, so Jesus himself will judge his sins. The castle then became how it is today. The neighboring city of Castelo do Piauí has plenty of storytelling. In the dead of the night, faint music and screams coming from the castle of old snake called Boa Iguaçu